Hey guys, I wanted to quickly share about a cool way you can support the show. Travel content creating and podcasting is so fun. But as you travel lovers know, traveling can get expensive. While I may receive trades from time to time, the flights, the behind the scenes hours filming, editing, recording, and sharing are often unseen and unpaid. There is this super cool website called buymeacoffee.com that was created specifically as a way to support creators like me. Buy Me a Coffee is a quick and simple way to show your support for the Trip Tales podcast. And Lord knows this busy Mama 3 could use a coffee to keep me recording and sharing, and maybe help with the grocery bill as well. I'll also give a special shout out by name to anyone who buys me a coffee in the following week's episode. So if you love Trip Tales, I'll put the link in the show notes, or you can get there by visiting buymeacoffee.com/Kelsey Graves. Thank you for considering supporting the show. Welcome to the Trip Tales podcast with me, Kelsey Graves. Let's jump into a new episode exploring a vacation destination that you'll want all the details about. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 13 of Trip Tales. Today we are going to be talking about a family's summer trip to Big Sky, Montana. But first, I have to thank last week's buymeacoffee.com supporter. So a big thank you to Rob Luna, who bought me a coffee with the message, please go to Jamaica. Well, Rob, I would love to go to Jamaica and review some of the best resorts, and it's thanks to supporters like you that could help me continue creating travel content on the podcast and on Instagram. So thanks, Rob. Just a quick reminder that my buymeacoffee.com link is in today's show notes if you'd like to show your support for the Trip Tales podcast. Okay, let's go to Montana. Today, I am joined by my guest, Carla. So welcome, Carla. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, thanks for having me.
We always start with a rapid fire get to know you. So tell everyone where you live, about your family, and what you do.
Okay, I live in Scottsdale, Arizona. I have two fun little boys. They are 8 and almost 10. And for work, I work for an international nonprofit running our donor travel program.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so you took a summer family trip to Montana in July 2022
Yep.
with your husband and two boys who were 6 and 8 at the time. Is that right?
Correct. Yep, that's right.
Yeah. So what made you guys choose Montana as your summer trip destination?
So my husband was turning 40 and he likes to think of himself as a cowboy. We grew up we grew up there in Nashville, and so there's obviously just some southern country roots in us. But he has always wanted to kind of explore the Montana area. And then about 4 years ago during COVID, we did a family trip to Zion National Park, and it put a national park bug in him, especially. And he's like, how many can we see? Let's go see them all. And living in Arizona, we're obviously close to a lot of really cool ones. So he had said for his 40th birthday, he wanted to go explore Montana and explore Yellowstone National Park. So that's where we went. Yeah.
And so do you guys watch the show Yellowstone?
Yeah. And I will tell you, while we were there, we asked several people there about the show Yellowstone, and they weren't the biggest fans.
Oh, really? The locals don't love it?
The locals, they're like, it's changed our area and it's not like that. And now everyone just wants to come here because of the show. So their reactions were actually really funny about it.
That is funny. We still haven't gotten into it, but I feel like with everyone around us loving it, I'm like, we maybe just need to binge it this summer.
You should. It's worth watching. I mean, you'll get hooked, I promise, but
All right. So how'd you guys get there?
So we flew into Bozeman. Southwest had a direct flight from Phoenix here. We flew straight into Bozeman, which is a really cool town in itself. We planned for kind of an afternoon in Bozeman because we couldn't check into our place till later, like most of these. And we stayed specifically in Big Sky, but we flew into Bozeman. And then it's about a 45-minute drive to Big Sky, Montana.
Okay, Bozeman is on my list. I just love, like you said, like wide open spaces, mountains, but with a country feel.
Yep.
It's at the very top of my list. So tell me about Bozeman. I've never been there. Tell me about the vibe, the town, kind of some of the stuff you guys did.
It's a college town, which who doesn't love a college town? We didn't explore a ton there, but the parts that we explored were just the main drag of the college town itself. So there were shops upon shops and restaurants and bars. I mean, we had our two little boys, so we weren't, exactly enjoying the college atmosphere, and it was summertime, so school wasn't in session specifically, but the town itself was just like a mountain college town. I mean, it was just very quaint. The places, everything was just local. There really weren't any chains around. It was just very mountain college town. That's the best way I know how to explain it.
Is it pretty small? Like, can you explore it in a day?
Probably. Yeah, it's pretty small. It's
Okay.
pretty small. Yeah,
And
it's
then
not
can
very
you
big.
see all the mountains from Bozeman?
You can, but the downtown strip of Bozeman, not as much. You have to get out a little bit from that little downtown strip to see them. But the drive from Bozeman to Big Sky itself was like, wow. I mean, we immediately were like, where are we? And this is amazing. So the drive itself is a little kind of, I mean, it's mountainy, it's kind of windy, but there's like rivers along the side and valleys and grassy meadows, but then mountains. So just the drive itself was just stunning in itself.
I love a mountain drive. I was going to ask you about that drive because I imagine that
Hmm.
it was just like breathtaking.
It was.
What's the weather like out there in July?
It was beautiful. I mean, so we obviously have very hot summers here in Arizona. And so one of the key points of where we wanted to go was we just got to cool off. Like we didn't want to be hot at all. It was definitely maybe a little warmer than we had expected, but not uncomfortable. No humidity. The evenings and mornings were chilly. We had sweatshirts, we had light jackets, but definitely by midday we were in shorts and a t-shirt. I'll get more into it later, but we had a hot tub we were staying where we use a lot. We whitewater raft. So I mean, it was definitely summer,
Hmm.
but the mornings and evenings being chilly was like exactly what we wanted.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that about the mountains, like that
Yeah.
crisp mountain air. Then it sounds like
Yep.
it got warm, but
Yep.
not super humid. So
Right.
perfect.
Right.
Okay, so tell us about the place you rented because this sounds very interesting to me.
Yeah, so we in Big Sky, we knew we wanted Big Sky. And there's so many places in Montana, obviously, but we knew it was close to the airport-ish, and it was a ski resort. And so what we've learned is ski resorts in the summer just kind of flip and they turn into just like all summer activities. And so we knew we wanted that. So in looking in Big Sky, there's a couple very, very nice hotels in the area. And we were going to be there for 9 days. And I thought, I think for 9 days, we don't want a hotel. I think we want like a house and we want something where we have a kitchen so we could cook some of our own meals. My husband loves to grill. And so he wanted to grill. So we started looking at vacation rentals. There's a million of them. We specifically wanted a ski in, ski out place, even though it wasn't obviously ski season. We just knew that with our little boys, we could just open the door and they could just go run free on the ski trails, which is what they did.
That's a super
Um,
smart tip because it's like
yep,
you wouldn't think about booking ski and ski out in the summer, but that means you're close to the resort, close to the
exactly.
trails.
Exactly. So
Super
those
smart.
ski runs really turned into hiking trails. And so we took like little walkie-talkies and the boys thought it was so cool because they would just like go out and we just like sit on the patio. So those were kind of our parameters. I ended up finding a lot of listings through this one company on like Airbnb, and I thought I'm just going to reach out to them directly, and I did, and they actually were from Nashville, so we had so many common interests. They had moved out of Franklin to Big Sky specifically, so we connected immediately, and they really just walked me through we booked it pretty far in advance. I will say we booked it probably 8 to 9 months in advance because I knew summers filled up there. And so they showed me all these different properties and we ended up picking one. It's called Cowboy Heaven. And it is like at the tip, which, my husband wanting to be a cowboy seemed kind of fitting for us. And so it's at the very tip top of one of the mountains within Big Sky, which I learned, and someone else can correct me on this because I'm not a skier, but I've heard Big Sky Resort is one of the largest ski resorts in the whole country,
Yeah, that sounds
which,
right.
yeah, I mean it's massive. And so we were at the tip top of one of them. It was quite from the base, it took us about 15 minutes to get to our cabin, which we were kind of worried about that drive, doing it multiple times a day. My little guy can get car sick. And I thought, what are we getting into? And it was totally fine. We rolled the windows down, just got fresh air, and it was totally fine. But we were at the top, and there was probably, I don't know, maybe like 10 to 15 other little cabins kind of around us, but it still felt private. We never saw anybody in any of the other ones. They may have been in there. We don't know. We felt like we had it to ourselves, but it had a hot tub on the balcony that overlooked. I'll have to send you some pictures that
Yeah,
overlooked.
please do.
I mean, just the most stunning seen ever. And so we just thought, well, we don't need to go anywhere else. So it worked. The ski runs, the hot tub, the balcony. It was a 2 bedroom, a little kitchen, laundry. So it just kind of worked for the long stand that we had.
Oh, amazing. Okay, so
Yeah,
Cowboy Heaven, was that the name of the cabin or the community?
that was the community.
Okay, so there's multiple cabins within Cowboy Heaven.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct. And it
cool.
basically just means it's all the cabins at the top. There are some like ours that were just kind of little quaint 1 and 2 bedroom, but then there were some like multi-million dollar massive probably home owners. But it's a community in itself, and there's just different types of cabins within the community.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So you can either book that on like a VRBO, Airbnb,
Hmm.
or you can Google that, reach out to them directly
Yep.
and talk to them directly.
The area itself is called Moonlight Basin.
Okay.
And then Cowboy Heaven is the top of it. There is like a kind of a country club, if you will, that some of the cabins within that community come with guest access. Ours specifically did not. We didn't envision ourselves going to many formal dinners in the evening. We weren't planning on golfing. So it didn't really matter to us to have that. But if the country club access is important to you, then it would just be worth making sure whatever you rent comes with guest access to that.
Got it. Good to know.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're in a cabin, you've got a kitchen. Did you have to go gather groceries or place a grocery delivery order, or how did
Yep.
that all work?
So someone had told me 2 grocery stores that we would see on our way into town. So that's what we did. So we stopped on our way into Big Sky, leaving Bozeman. I think it was an Albertsons. And we just got basically what we think we'd want for the week. We've definitely overbought. You just never know. We wanted to have enough and we didn't want to have to keep going to the store. I don't know if there was any grocery delivery. We never looked into it. I think probably the grocery store was the best option just to make sure we could get it and it made sense. It was probably the best for us. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I always overbuy on trips too, but it's kind of like you just got to get that feeling of guilt from
Yes.
wasting food out of your head because like you said, you don't want to go back multiple times and you do feel so bad at the end like, "Oh my gosh, what am I going to do with all this?" But I just like leave it. Sometimes I clean it all out if they tell
Yeah.
me to, and sometimes I leave it wondering if the people that are coming to clean could use,
Could use it.
some Diet
Right.
Cokes
Or
or
you always rent a vacation home, you're like, oh, sweet, someone left ketchup here.
yes.
So
Yes.
I like to think that too.
Okay, I know we talked about Big Sky is a very popular ski resort in the winter, but tell us what some of the things they have to offer in the summer are and what kind of the vibe is in the summer.
Yeah, so the vibe in the summer is super cool. I can't compare it to winter because we've never been. But for the summertime, one of the coolest things we did was they had something called Creature X, and it was basically so they cater to kids and families in the summer for sure. And it was you take one of the ski lifts up to the top of one of the mountains, and I think it's like a first aid medic kind of shack tent, if you will, for like during ski season, but they turn it into an escape room.
Oh,
And so we're at the
wow.
top of this mountain and it's like a whole big trying to find Creature X. And so I mean, it took us probably longer than it should have. We tried to let the kids take control and it was kind of hard. But they loved it. And so probably spent like an hour up in there doing this escape room. They totally refurbished the whole medic tent and made it like a shack where this old explorer had landed and they were trying to find this creature. So it was super
So like
cool. That
Creature
was
X is kind of like a monster,
Yeah, like a Sasquatch type
yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yes, exactly like that. And then
Fun.
after you take the ski lift up there to do it, then you hike back down. And so then like it's like a full experience. So that was the coolest thing we did there. But it also like they had rock climbing, they had like the trampoline bungee stuff. They were teaching you how to lasso. There was a brewery on site. There was obviously the ski lifts that you can take all the way up just to look around and come back down. They had shops, they had multiple restaurants, and then at another little part, they had a lake where you could kayak and paddleboard and fish if you want. So there was really tons of options of things to do. And we spent several afternoons just kind of doing those activities and going back to what the kids liked the day before and wanting to do again.
That is so fun. I love it.
Yeah.
Did you do the water stuff? Did you get out on the
Yep.
water?
Yep. We did the paddle boarding and the kayaking and the kids, they even had kids ones. So each of my boys got their own little personal kayak. And it's a small
Cute.
lake. Like
Yeah.
it's big enough that like you have space and you feel like you're out there, but it's not like we felt comfortable just sitting on the bank. It's like a little beach. And so then they like played in the sand. And, they were young enough to where like sand toys were still kind of a cool thing to them. And we just kind of sit there and hang out, and they would just go explore and then come right back. So it was small enough that we could see them no matter where they were, but large enough that you could spread out and not be on top of each other.
Sounds like very like relaxing, outdoorsy type days, just kind of
Yep.
like finding your way.
Yep.
So I feel like I probably already know the answer to this, but are all those little activities like, do you have to pay for each one throughout
So
the
the
resort?
the Creature X thing, yes, that was like a
Yeah.
whole separate ticket and experience. But then like the rock climbing and the bungee thing and the lassoing and some of that stuff, you pay like and there's also putt putt there. I just realized that remember there was putt putt. You paid kind of like a package deal.
Like a
So it was
resort
like
fee or like a,
kind
yeah.
of, it was like pick two and pay this price or buy three, get one free. And you had like a little punch card. And
Okay.
so I think we got like a little pass, and it was, let's say they each had 6 activities. And my one son, they also had rock mining where you like mined for rocks. And my little guy loved that. And so I think he spent all 6 of his doing that. But it was like a punch card. And each time you did an activity, they punched it, and then you could buy another one. I mean, if you run out, buy another one. And it was
Right.
not expensive. I want to say it was, $25 for a 6 punch card. So it was, you paid for each one, but not like you'd think at some resorts. It was definitely more budget friendly for that.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah,
You guys stayed for 8 nights. That's a
we did.
substantial summer trip. I'm not sure that we've ever stayed somewhere on a vacation with the family for more than 8 nights.
Yes, it was. We would have stayed longer. I mean, I think having the cabin helped because we felt like we had a home base and we could just chill and we weren't
Yeah.
go, go, go. And we knew that we wanted 2 full days in Yellowstone National Park. And so doing that, we knew that we needed to have some extra time to explore other parts of the area.
Okay, yeah, that makes
Yeah.
sense. So before we talk about Yellowstone, talk through like a typical day, like how you guys would kind of plan out your days and what you would do at Big Sky.
Sure. So, another cool thing, very close to Big Sky, technically outside of Big Sky, but just like at the base of the mountain, there's also a beautiful river called the Gallatin River. So, if you're a big fly fisher or rafter, you most likely have heard of this river. I actually think they filmed part of the river runs through it on this.
Oh,
I'll
cool.
have to check myself on that, but I'm pretty sure that's what our guide told us. So like our first day there, we white water raft, and it was so much fun. I was very nervous with a 6 and an 8-year-old, but it was the perfect amount of like ease, but also thrill. We had full wetsuits on because the water was very cold. It's all snow runoff. I mean, it's not the Caribbean. It's very
So do you
cold
wear like swimsuits, cover ups, and then put the wetsuit over your swimsuit?
over the swimsuit. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And it was so much fun. So that was, I think, a 3 or 4 hour thing, but 100% recommend. It was probably one of our favorite things we did. And then every day we had like a lunch planned somewhere because we were usually out and about. The dinners were where we would either go out or cook back at home, but lunch we always were out at a brewery. There was a really good barbecue place there that we loved right on the river, stunning views. The kids just ran and we just relaxed.
And was that part of Big Sky or over by the Gallatin River?
It was over by the Gallatin River, but I say it's not in Big Sky, but it was 5 minutes from downtown Big Sky.
Okay.
So not that bad. We hiked a lot. There was lots of family friendly hikes. There was a couple hikes that were not family friendly that my husband went off and just did on his own and explored because he wanted to do some more challenging ones. We would spend our time at the ski resorts doing all of those activities. They're also downtown Big Sky had a farmers market one day. And so we went to the farmers market, and then twice a week they do outdoor concerts, summer concert series. And I mean, it was like everyone in Big Sky and anywhere around there came out, and the music was really good. And so there was vendors set up and a concert, but then there was also like playground. So we'd sit and enjoy the music, and the kids were on the playground and would meet friends and play football. So it was very someone had told us it was very family friendly, and it shocked us at actually how family friendly it was.
That sounds so fun. So is downtown Big Sky within Big Sky Ski Resort, or is that kind
Yes.
of okay? So it's all this big, massive area.
It's
There's a
all this big
downtown
mass.
area, and then you
Mhm.
kind of can go off up into the ski mountain
Yep.
areas.
Yep, exactly. It's all kind of one. It's actually very small, but there's I guess, a lot to do, if you will. It's all
Yeah.
just one big mountain area, and the downtown area is at the base, and then
Okay.
everything else is up towards the ski resort, I
And
guess.
there's a farmer's market
There's a
and
farmer's market, yep.
concerts. Oh my
And
gosh, that sounds
concerts,
so
and like the
fun.
shops were so cool. There was like everyone likes to do, make your own cowboy hat place. There was lots of Western type stores. There was tons of breweries, tons of restaurants. But then like there was parks and there was open fields and playgrounds. And sometimes my kids just want a football and they want to run around an open field. And so I tried not to plan every minute of the day and just kind of see where it took us. And we ended up finding more than enough things to do.
Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. I want to
Yeah.
go back to whitewater rafting really quickly because I have done that myself when I was maybe, like a teen. And then my kids would love to do it, but I currently have a 6, 8, and 12-year-old. And like you said, like it seriously terrifies me, especially with my 6-year-old. So I'm sure I remember there's like different rapid levels,
Yes.
and I'm sure where you went on the most family-friendly one. So tell us a little
Yes.
bit about like the one you chose and
Yep.
how intense it was.
So they were really great. I called and said, okay, this is the deal. We're coming. We want to do this. These are my kids' ages. Um, and they helped me 100%. They had probably 5 different options of things we could do. And he said, oh, we definitely recommend the half day. The full day is just too long for those
Yeah.
little kids. And I agree. I mean, we were out there for 3 hours and I really was like, oh, I don't know that I could do this for 6 to 8 hours. I think they would end up getting bored. So we chose the 3 hour one, which is only, I think it's the south end of the river, and it definitely gets more intense. And I say intense kind of lightly because it's not that intense, but it starts very kind of calm, almost to the point where the boys were like, okay, we're ready.
What are
Like
we doing?
we're comfortable now. Let's get some action in here. So it helped because it didn't just start off like really intense to where they were scared. And no one even came close to falling out. I mean, I guess you would if you stood up and like made yourself fall out, but the guides are so good and they take you down like the rapid the right way. And they were so sweet with the boys. They'd be like, okay, this one's really cool. Who wants to be the cowboy on this one? And they would take turns like sitting up front, sitting in the back with the guides. I mean, they were great and no one ever felt unsafe. I mean, you have helmets on and they talk to you about if you do fall out, what to do. So you feel prepared. They were never scared. And I think after the very first rapid, it was like, oh, this is so fun. We want a bigger one. So, I mean, it kind of left you wanting more, but in a good way.
Fun. And then do they like take pictures of you guys that
Yep,
they give you at
they
the
take
end?
pictures. Yep, all throughout the ride in different spots, like usually where the bigger rapids are. There's a photographer off on the rocks taking pictures of every raft that comes through. And then when you get back to their kind of outfitter place and take all your gear off, then you can go through the photos. And because of course you want photos of it. And I think I actually did buy a waterproof like phone pouch, which I'm so glad I did because I did get some fun shots of us going down the rapids kind of together and like of the kids as we were going down it. But then you're like, well, I'm not in any of those photos. And
Right.
and and like it's a different angle when they get it. And so it was cool to come back and then see. And of course, I was the sucker and bought a few photos from this photographer who charges an arm and a leg for a
Right.
photo of your family on a raft.
Right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Do you remember
Yeah.
the name of the whitewater rafting company?
Yes, it was called Geyser Whitewater Expedition.
Okay, we're gonna put that in the show notes.
And all these
Awesome.
guys, that's how they spend their summer. They're all ski guides and instructors in the winter, and in the summer they do all these rafting trips. They were super
What a
cool,
life. That is
right?
such a good life if you're like an
Right?
outdoorsy dude.
Yep.
Okay, let's talk Yellowstone. I've never
Yeah.
been. So you guys had rented a car while you were out there, and so you were
Yep.
able to drive over there. How far away is Yellowstone from Big Sky?
So we did the west entrance. There's several entrances. I don't know who would remember this, but there was some massive flooding about, I mean, it was probably 2 months before we went to the point where I was like, oh no, they closed so much of the park. People were having to cancel their trips. And in the summer, that's when Yellowstone is like at its peak. And so we were really nervous actually, because I was like, if Yellowstone's closed, I don't think we're going to do this. Like, this is really what he wants to see. The other stuff is just icing on the cake. And so while sad that flooding happened, it actually worked to our advantage because so many people canceled their reservations that it kind of opened the park up to us. So the west entrance is the one closest to Big Sky, and it took us probably an hour to get there. the north entrance of the park was still closed at the time, so that really wasn't an option for us anyway. And we knew the west was a good spot to kind of hit the highlights, Old Faithful and all the things you hear about. We knew the west entrance was going to be what was near a lot of that kind of first time goers of things you need to check off your list. Um, After doing some research and asking around, I was very overwhelmed to the point where I didn't even know where to begin. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know how to plan this. And I had heard that there's really not any self-service within the park. And so I thought, I'm not going to have like my phone to Google, like, how do I get to Old Faithful? Like, we're going to have to just rely on this old school map. And I just envisioned us kind of like fighting, going, turn left. Where do we park? I don't know. And I thought, that's just not what I want. So we kind of splurged and we found a company that kind of did the tours for you. And it was called Big Sky Adventures. And their base was in Big Sky, and they picked us up in this super cool giant Sprinter van. I mean, we could have had room for 20 people, but it was just four of us. And they did the whole thing. So I told them what we wanted to see. I told them my kids are super interested in animals. So the more animals we see, the better. And so we had 2 different days. The first day was kind of based around like animals and just nature and the sceneries and the hot spots. And the second day was on geysers and the hot springs. And so we got to see two totally different parts of the park, but I feel like we saw the whole park. I know we didn't because it's that massive. But while it was a splurge, it was hands down the best decision we made because we truly got to just sit back and relax and let someone else go ways like, oh, if you go left there, you're just going to sit in traffic trying to park. But they know, well, if you keep going straight, there's a better parking lot that no one parks in. So it took all of the stress out of it. And they packed us lunches. They found picnic spots and they pulled out the most gourmet picnic lunch I've ever seen, and also taught us so much. So I know there's like audio things that you can listen to while you're driving through the park, but we just got to hear, we had a different one, a different guide each day that we did it, and they taught us so much. They answered a million questions from curious little boys who want to know everything about everything. They knew the best spots to go see a herd of bison who were moving. They're like, oh, we know at this time of day, these bison like to drink out of that pond. And so they would know, take us over there. So it really made sure that we had everything we wanted in the 2 days that we had there.
I love this investment so much because you're all the way out there with your family. You want to have this great experience at Yellowstone. And I was recently researching the Grand Canyon for a trip. And like you said, and that one's a little easier because it's like one massive hole, but there's all these different entrances, all these different hikes. Some are kid friendly, some aren't. And I was just like, and self service can be dicey. And I was like, oh my gosh, like what if we get out there and then people say the traffic is really bad or all these different things.
Yeah.
So I had found a similar company that people were raving about on TripAdvisor because they pick you up from your hotel, I think in Flagstaff, they drive you over, they have a picnic lunch, and they take you to all the perfect spots. You get all your
Yep.
pictures. And it's like if you're all the way out there with your family, you want to take advantage of those 2 days and see everything you can. So I am like, this type of
Yep.
investment is right up my alley,
Yep.
especially with a bunch of little kids.
Yes. Yep. I just wanted to make sure it was the perfect experience, one for his birthday and just for all of us to remember. So
Yeah, and for a
they
40th, that is a special
exactly,
experience.
exactly. It was perfect. And I think I can't imagine trying to do that by ourselves. It would have been probably a disaster.
Yeah, you
So
probably wouldn't have hit all those same places. You would have
no,
got stuck in
no,
traffic. You would have, been in the back of a parking lot and had to hike all the way up somewhere. You would have been like,
absolutely.
where are we eating lunch?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you have a short window. I mean, it turns dark and then the park closes. So I'm like, we got to do it. So
Yeah.
we did it with a day in between. So we did one day in the park and then took a day off and then another day in the park because I didn't think we wanted to do it back to back. And I think that was a good decision as well.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to put that in the show notes. Big Sky Adventures
Yep.
Yellowstone Tour. That sounds
Yep.
awesome.
Yep.
What were some of your or your kids, like what were the most memorable Yellowstone moments where you're like, oh my gosh, someone's got to go see this?
So the geysers are so like otherworldly. I mean, some of the areas that we walked through, I felt like we were on a planet. I was like, this is not. So the top Yellowstone part of it is the top of a volcano, which was super cool to me. I did not realize that. And so all these like geysers and hot springs, like they don't even know how deep they are because it's so hot. They can't even send devices down there. Like not to be morbid, but there's a story about a little boy who jumped in one. And
Ugh.
it's like, it's part, I know, but it's like part of the history of the park. And there's signs all over the park. And the boy, I think, was 8 at the time, which
Oh
was my
gosh, your
son's
kids are
birthday.
like, oh, we're
But
holding your
they,
hand,
like,
mom.
to this day, still talk about it because the way they tell the story and how the family like invested all this money into the park to like put these signs out to teach people like this is not a lake. You cannot jump in these things.
Yeah,
They're like
you will die.
bubbly and yeah.
I've
So the
seen them. I've
geysers,
seen videos of them. It's like this almost bubbly mud looking stuff.
yes.
Like, what planet is that
Yes.
on?
I don't
Earth?
know. And then there's some that are the bluest, like the bluest, most turquoise water you've ever seen. And so it's very weird to see these like foamy, smoky, bubbly ones, but then this one over here looks like the Caribbean. It's just crazy. And Old Faithful, of course, is so cool. I mean, it's obviously the touristy thing there, and
And how
everyone
often does it go off again?
I want to say every hour and 10 minutes.
Okay.
I don't know that I think it depends on the time of year, but again, our guide knew exactly when it was going off, and so we didn't have to just guess and like show up and be like, oh, it just went off. Now we got to sit here for an hour and a half. So their guide knew exactly when it was going off. So that was another perk to having someone else plan all that. So, but it was super cool, worth seeing. If I went back, I don't know that I'd sit and do Old Faithful again. I think I'd explore a different part of the park. The animals were so cool. We had to stop at one point to let a herd of bison walk through, and the kids just thought that. I mean, you don't see that kind of stuff normally, and so it's
No.
just and the bears and the just. I mean, all of it. It was just stunning and just something that we've never seen before.
What I know this is like random, but what kind of stuff did he pull out for your gourmet lunch?
Oh gosh. I mean, a charcuterie board that's not like any I've ever seen. Lots of dips, but everything was homemade. So I think it's two sisters, I think, who run the place. And then I think there's like an uncle or a brother or a husband or somebody who's kind of the chef. And he makes these famous cookies all over Big Sky. Everyone knows about them. And so you get the cookies that everyone talks about. And then it's lots of like pasta salads and dips and any kind of sandwich we could have ever wanted. Lots of kid-friendly options. They asked before any allergies, anything we need to cater to dietary wise. It was mainly just very gourmet sandwiches. I mean, I would have probably slept together some peanut butter and jelly and thrown it in a baggie and on the way. But there was tablecloths and all kinds of drinks. No alcohol. They did not bring alcohol. But it was all kinds of like drinks and sodas and teas and lemonades and then kind of like appetizers and then kind of sandwiches and entrees and then these famous yummy cookies.
Oh my gosh, that sounds incredible. Even
It
if
was
you're
great.
not on a
Great.
Yellowstone
And I didn't
tour.
have to do any of it. So that
Yes.
was the best part.
How fun. I love
Yeah.
it. Okay,
Yeah.
that sounds amazing. I will be booking that if we go to Yellowstone.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, anything else back at Big Sky that we missed or any restaurants or the breweries that you particularly loved?
River House Barbecue was the barbecue place on the river. It is hands down like the seats at the bar are swings. And so, of course, I know kids aren't supposed to sit at the
Cute.
bar, but they let my kids sit on the swings for a long time. It looks like it might also sort of be a wedding venue because some of it was set up with like these big open spaces, but it is right on this stunning river. And so the kids just ran and like skipped rocks for hours while we just sat and watched them. And the food was pretty good. That place was good. We also went to Bob's Burgers, which was really good. And
Was that
then
in Big Sky?
yep.
Yeah.
And then there's a very fancy, stunningly beautiful dude ranch right outside of Big Sky. It's called Lone Mountain Ranch. And originally I had looked at staying there. I would have loved to. It was booked, and two, it was very pricey and I'm sure worth every penny, but just kind of not what we were looking to do. And they have a really fancy restaurant there. So for his birthday night, we went to the restaurant. It was called Horn and Cantle. And because it's a dude ranch, we basically spent all afternoon and evening there because the boys got to feed the horses and play horseshoes and play cornhole. And there was so many families there that were staying obviously at the dude ranch that they found kids to play with. And we just like sat by the fire and had some drinks and then had a really, really, really good fancy dinner. So that was kind of our fancy meal, if you will, and got to experience this dude ranch that I kind of wanted to stay at. So this was a good way to kind of go and experience it without really having to stay there. And they welcome people. I was kind of nervous, like, we're not guests. Is it okay? And they welcome it. The restaurant is open to anyone. You do not have to be a Dude Ranch guest to stay there. But we got to kind of experience the day there.
How fun. And then you
Yeah.
said up at the cabin, you loved hanging out in the hot tub.
Yes, that was, I think if I were to ask the boys, what was your favorite part? I think they'd say the hot tub. I mean, isn't that kids? Like, you're like,
Was it
that?
hot or cold for this time of year? The hot tub. Was it
Um,
still heated or was
it
it
was
just like a
heated.
cold?
It was
Oh, okay.
definitely heated, but it wasn't too hot outside to get in it. And it was in the shade. Like, it wasn't sunny, like where it was positioned on the patio. It was always in the shade. And I think they probably got in it 3 times a day. Basically, every time we came home,
Yeah.
that was the first thing they wanted to do. So yeah, it was just a really fun, relaxing way. And even when, they wanted to watch a movie, the patio was such that we would just sit on the patio and just stare at the beauty.
Oh my gosh, it sounds
Yeah.
amazing. I'm sure your husband felt like it was a perfect 40th birthday trip.
Yeah, I think he did. We still talk about it. I made a big YouTube montage video of everything we did, and it's entirely too long for anyone to watch but us. But hopefully, it's a way for us to always remember the week we spent there.
Well, hey, maybe we'll link to it and then
I
people can just
mean,
get an
you're
idea
welcome
of
to if you really want
yes.
to get an in-depth look at a Doolin family summer vacation. Go
I
for
love it. Okay, I end every episode with if someone out there is considering taking this trip, what is it about Big Sky, Montana and Yellowstone in the summer that would make you say just book it?
The kids got to be kids. They were outside. I think so much now our kids are not getting to experience some of the stuff they should be experiencing in the summer. Everything was family friendly. The weather was perfect. It was a perfect mix of action and adventure, but also just really good quality family time. It's something I think we'll always remember. The downtime was amazing, but we did just enough to where we weren't bored. And I think we truly relaxed. A lot of family vacations, how many of us leave there and go, I need a vacation from that. But I think we were so relaxed that it felt like a vacation and we just could have kept going. There was no part of us that thought, okay, we've had enough. It's time to go home. And I think, everyone says, what is it? The vacations with kids are just trips. They're
Yeah.
not really vacations. Is that the
Yeah.
saying? But this truly was. And I think having just enough to be pre-planned gave us something to look forward to while also giving us time to just figure out what there was to do and then take it from there. So it was everything we wanted.
I feel like 8 nights with your family in a cabin, if you can still say that was a vacation and you wanted to stay
Yeah,
longer, that's saying something.
that's a win. I
Yeah,
agree.
that's a win. Well, this has been amazing, and I think that I'm going to be researching Big Sky in the
I
summer
hope
after we get
so.
off the call.
I
So
hope so.
thank you so much for being here, Carla. This was extremely helpful.
Thanks, Kelsey, for having me. I hope you get to enjoy it yourself someday.
That wraps up another episode of Trip Tales. If you have a trip you'd like to share about on the podcast, email me at triptalespodcast@gmail.com and I'll add you to the schedule. Also, be sure to follow the show so that you don't miss any upcoming vacation destinations. And if you have an extra minute in your day, please leave a review for the podcast. It helps more than you could imagine. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next episode of Trip Tales. Hey guys, I wanted to quickly share about a cool way you can support the show. Travel content creating and podcasting is so fun. But as you travel lovers know, traveling can get expensive. While I may receive trades from time to time, the flights, the behind the scenes hours filming, editing, recording, and sharing are often unseen and unpaid. There is this super cool website called buymeacoffee.com that was created specifically as a way to support creators like me. Buying Me a Coffee is a quick and simple way to show your support for the Trip Tales podcast. And Lord knows this busy Mama 3 could use a coffee to keep me recording and sharing, and maybe help with the grocery bill as well. I'll also give a special shout out by name to anyone who buys me a coffee in the following week's episode. So if you love Trip Tales, I'll put the link in the show notes, or you can get there by visiting buymeacoffee.com/Kelsey Graves. Thank you for considering supporting the show.